You know that feeling, right? That low-level static hum in the back of your head. It's not quite a headache, and it's definitely not panic, but it's just there. It's like a background app on your phone that you can't find and you can't close.
And it is just quietly, methodically draining your battery percentage down to 0.
Exactly.
The dreaded background anxiety. We have all been there.
It's worse than just anxiety, though. It's this very specific sensation that your brain is, well, that it's full, like physically full.
Yeah.
You're sitting there maybe trying to enjoy a coffee or focus on a spreadsheet, and you just know you are forgetting something important.
Right.
You're trying to remember to email that client and buy milk and schedule the dentist and finish that quarterly report, and oh yeah, you have to call your mom. It honestly feels like we are all just drowning in this deluge of mental to-dos.
It feels that way because in a very real biological sense we are. But here is the fascinating thing about that drowning sensation.
Yeah.
It is almost never about the actual volume of the tasks. I mean, you could have 3 things to do and feel completely overwhelmed, or you could have 50 things and feel totally in control.
So it's not the number of things.
No. That you're describing, it's a hardware issue. Or, more accurately, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the hardware we are all working with.
What do you mean by hardware?
We treat our brains like hard drives, like they're just storage devices designed to hold data. But biologically, that is not what the brain is for.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately because I 100% treat my brain like a hard drive. I am constantly trying to file things away in there all day long. So if my brain isn't a storage device, what is it?
It's a CPU, it's a processor. Your brain is designed for pattern recognition, for decision-making, for synthesis, for creative leaps. It is evolutionarily unsuited for storing long, itemized lists of random tasks.
And when you try to use a high-performance processor as like a storage warehouse.
You get a bottleneck, you get lag, the whole system slows down.
So when I'm walking around trying to mentally rehearse my grocery list while also thinking about a work project, I'm basically just clogging up the system.
Precisely. And we have to look at the stats here to really understand the severity of this. There's a concept in cognitive psychology called Miller's Law. It's been around for decades, and it's solid.
Miller's Law. Okay.
It states that human working memory, your brain's RAM, essentially, can only hold between 4 to 7 items at once.
Wait. 4 to 7. That's it.
That's it.
That seems remarkably low. I feel like I'm juggling 20 things right now just talking to you.
You feel like you are, but what you're actually doing is just switching between them very rapidly. And every time you switch, you degrade your performance on all of them.
So I'm not multitasking. I'm just task switching badly.
Exactly. And think about it this way. If you are holding buy milk, finish a report, call the bank, and email the boss in your head, you are pretty much at capacity.
Wow.
You are using roughly 50 to 60% of your entire cognitive processing power just to not forget those items.
That is a terrifying statistic. It's like running a high-end gaming computer, but you have 50 Chrome tabs open, and 3 of them are secretly playing YouTube videos you can't find.
Yes.
The fan is spinning, the machine is getting hot,
Yeah.
and if you try to open Photoshop to actually do some work, the whole thing just freezes.
That is the perfect analogy. And that spinning beach ball of death sensation in your brain, that leads directly to the why behind all the anxiety. It's a phenomenon called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect. I've heard this term floating around in like productivity circles. It's about uncompleted tasks, right?
Correct. But it's not just that we remember them, it's that the brain actively hates open loops. It sees them as a threat.
A threat.
Psychological research shows that if a task is interrupted or unfinished, the brain marks it as danger or high priority. So your subconscious loops it repeatedly, literally spinning it in the background to ensure you don't forget it. It pokes you every 5 minutes. Don't forget the milk. Don't forget the milk.
And that looping is what I perceive as stress.
That is the hum.
Okay, so the mission of today's deep dive isn't just about getting organized so we look neat and tidy. We are not talking about color coding our bookshelves.
Not at all. I mean, if you want to color code your bookshelf, that's fine, but that's aesthetics. We are talking about biological engineering. We are looking at building an external brain.
An external brain.
I like that. We need to design a specific workflow and install some mental models to take that load off your biological CPU so it can get back to doing what it does best, thinking.
I love that distinction. We're moving from a messy mind to a structured architecture. So let's get into the how. Section 1 of our sources talks about the architecture of organization. And it starts with a critique of how most of us and I'm definitely including myself here, try to organize naturally.
Right. So if I asked to see your computer desktop or your Google Drive right now, how is it organized?
Well, it's mostly folders, like work, personal, taxes, and probably a big folder called miscellaneous, if I'm being completely honest.
Exactly. That is subject-based organization.
Yeah.
And it is fundamentally flawed for getting things done. You see this everywhere. A folder called Marketing, a note-taking app with a section called Health.
Wait, why is that a problem? That sounds so logical. Everything about my health goes in the health folder. What's wrong with that?
It's logical for a librarian whose job is to store and find information, but it's terrible for an operator whose job is to act. The problem is that a folder name like Health doesn't tell you what to do. It's just a bucket.
Huh.
When you look at a folder named Health, do you feel an urge to act? Probably not. It's static. It's cold storage. To organize a mind effectively, you have to shift from subject-based organization to action-based organization.
Action-based.
Okay.
This brings us to the first major framework in our source material, PARA.
Yes, this is Tiago Forte's system, and it's become the gold standard for a very good reason. PARA stands for Projects, Areas, Resources, and Archives.
PARA.
The idea is that everything, every single file, every note, every task belongs in one of these four categories, and it's based entirely on how actionable that thing is for you right now.
Let's break them down, because I feel like the nuance here is where people get stuck. I know I do. So first up, projects.
This is your hot storage. This is the front burner on your stove. A project is a series of tasks that are linked to a goal, and this is the non-negotiable part. It must have a deadline.
Must have a deadline?
Yeah.
That seems kind of aggressive. What if I'm just, working on something generally?
Then it is not a project, and that is the mistake everyone makes. If it doesn't have a deadline, it's a dream, or it's a hobby. Launch website V2 is a project. You need to launch it by November 1st. Buy a house is a project. You need to close by the summer. These are short-term, active efforts.
And you should be looking at this list.
Yeah.
How often?
Every single day. This is what you're actively working on.
Okay, I can see the utility there. But this is where I get confused, and I'm sure a lot of people do. What about something like get in shape or be a better writer? Those don't really have deadlines. I don't want to stop being in shape on November 1st.
Exactly. And that is why they are not projects. They are areas. This is the second category, the A in PARA.
Areas.
Areas are long-term responsibilities. These are spheres of activity that have a standard to be maintained over time, but they have no specific deadline. So examples would be health, finances, car maintenance, or professional development.
Ah, I see the distinction now. You don't finish health. You just manage it.
Right, you maintain it. And here is where the magic really happens. Projects often arise from your areas. You have an area called health, and you realize you're slipping on your standard of, say, cardiovascular fitness.
Yeah.
So from that area, you create a project called Run a 5K in October.
So the project has the finish line, but the area is forever.
Precisely. The project gets you back up to standard within the area.
That distinction actually clears up a lot of the anxiety for me. I feel like I have these projects that have been dragging on for 3 years, and it's just because they're actually areas. I'm trying to finish something that can't be finished.
And that creates a constant low-level sense of failure. Why haven't I completed finances yet? Well, because you never will. It's an ongoing standard. Once you accept that, the pressure just evaporates.
Okay, so that's P and A. Moving down the list, what about our resources?
Resources are just themes of interest. This is your personal library. It's things you're curious about. Web design assets, psychology research, cooking recipes, jokes for speeches.
So there's no immediate pressure here.
Zero. You aren't working on them right now, but they're useful utility for the future. It's your reference material.
And finally, the last one, archives.
This is maybe the most important one for clarity, and it's the one people resist the most. Archives are for inactive items, completed projects, hobbies you're no longer pursuing, past tax returns.
I feel a bit of that hoarding instinct kicking in right now. Why move it? Why not just leave it in the folder just in case I need it?
Because visual clutter creates mental clutter. Hoarding kills clarity. If your projects folder is full of stuff you finished in 2019, your brain has to scan past all that dead weight every time you look for your current work.
It adds friction.
A ton of friction. You have to be ruthless about moving things to archives. It's not deleted, it's just out of sight. You can always search for it if you need it, but it's not cluttering up your active workspace.
Okay, so PARA handles the actionable tasks and the files. It's the containers. But what about the stuff that goes inside the containers? Specifically, ideas and knowledge. Our sources talk about a completely different framework for that. The Zettelkasten.
Ah, yes, the Zettelkasten. This is where we move from just organizing to recalling better. If PRA is how you organize your desk, Zettelkasten is how you organize your genius.
That's a very bold claim.
It is, but it really holds up. See, standard note-taking usually involves those rigid folders we just talked about. You read a book on economics, you take a bunch of notes, and you file it in a folder called Economics.
Which we just established is problematic because I'll probably never open that folder again unless I'm specifically thinking about that one book.
Correct. And also, the brain doesn't work in folders. It works by association. Neurons that fire together, wire together. The Zettelkasten method, which was created by the sociologist Niklas Luhmann, who is insanely prolific, by the way. He published over 70 books and 400 articles.
Wow.
It mimics this biological structure. It's a web of ideas, not a cabinet of files.
And the core unit of this whole system is the atomic note. Talk us through that. How do I actually write one?
Okay, so let's say you're reading a book and you find a really great quote about how discipline is more reliable than motivation. The old way is to highlight it and just leave it in the book where it will die. The Zettelkasten way is to take that one single idea and create a new separate note.
Just for that one idea.
One idea per note. That's the atomic part. And you rewrite it in your own words. That's crucial for understanding. You don't just copy-paste. Then you title it something descriptive, like discipline versus motivation.
And does that go in a folder?
No. This is the key. The note must be autonomous. It has to make sense on its own if you read it 10 years from now, without needing to know which book it came from or what the surrounding context was.
And then comes the linking part. This is the magic, right?
This is the magic. Instead of asking, where do I file this, which is a storage question, you ask a retrieval question. In what context do I want to see this again?
Ooh, that's a powerful reframe.
So you might link that note on discipline versus motivation to another note you have on habit formation, or maybe one on marathon training, or finishing a PhD. You build a web of connections.
So when you pull on one string,
Yeah.
say you want to write an article about habits, all these related ideas from different books you read years apart just come with it.
Exactly. You're effectively turning your notes into a conversation partner. You're surprising yourself with connections your past self made 3 years ago. You're building a second brain that thinks with you.
I love that. Now, before we move on, there was one more organizing principle mentioned for those moments when we are just drowning in raw data and we don't have time for all this high-level linking. The LATCH principle.
Right. This is from Richard Saul Wurman, the guy who created the TED conferences. It's the emergency brake for chaos. If you have a giant, messy pile of data, say a massive spreadsheet or a disorganized room, there are really only 5 fundamental ways to organize it.
And LATCH is the acronym.
Location, alphabet, time, category, or hierarchy. LATCH.
It sounds almost too simple.
That's the entire point. When you're overwhelmed, you get analysis paralysis. How should I sort all this? Just pick one from the list. Time is good for history or a sequence of photos. Hierarchy is good for a magnitude, biggest to smallest. Category is good for browsing, like in a store. If you're stuck, just LATCH it and move on. Don't overthink it.
Okay, so we've got the containers, PRA, and Zettelkasten with the architecture, but our sources point out there's a step before we even put things in the containers. The source calls this structured thinking, or reprocessing. Basically, the idea of garbage in, garbage out.
You absolutely cannot organize messy thoughts. It's impossible. If your thinking is muddled, your lists and notes will be muddled. You need to structure the input first. And the gold standard here, which comes from the consulting world of McKinsey & Company, is the MECE principle.
MECE. Mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. It sounds like a legal term or something from a science textbook.
It sounds dry, I know, but it is an incredibly practical tool for solving problems clearly. Mutually exclusive just means there's no overlap between your categories. Collectively exhaustive means there are no gaps. You've covered every single possibility.
Can you give us a concrete example? Because I feel like I categorize things badly all the time.
Sure, let's say you're a business owner and you're trying to segment your customers to send out marketing emails. A bad non-MEC way would be to have categories like millennials and golfers.
Right, because a millennial can also be a golfer. They overlap.
Exactly. It's not mutually exclusive. So if you send an email to your golfers list and your millennials list, that person gets 2 emails. Now they're annoyed.
Okay, so what's the MECE way?
A MEC way would be to segment by age groups, 0, 20, 21, 40, 41 plus. A person can only be in one of those buckets and it covers everyone. No overlap, no gaps.
That makes perfect sense for data. But how do we apply this to, say, a life problem. The outline mentions using it to drill down.
This is where it gets really powerful. Let's say your business profit is down. You're panicking. You start blaming the economy, your marketing team, your staff. It's just chaos.
I've been there.
MECE forces you to stop guessing and be logical. You build a tree. Profit is down. This implies either revenue is down or costs are up. It physically cannot be anything else. Those are the only two levers.
Okay, so let's say I look at the numbers, and revenue is actually fine, so it must be costs.
Right. Now you drill down on costs. Costs are either fixed costs, like rent, or variable costs, like materials. You check your rent, it's the same as last year, so it must be a problem with your materials. You've gone from the sky is falling to the price of lumber went up in 3 logical steps.
It's like debugging your own logic code. It removes the emotion.
Completely.
Speaking of logic, the sources also bring up first principles thinking. Elon Musk talks about this a lot.
He does, and it's a great counterpoint to reasoning by analogy. First principles thinking is about stripping away all assumptions to reach the fundamental truths, the physics or biology of a situation.
So instead of saying, we have to buy this expensive project management software because that's what Google uses, which is reasoning by analogy.
You break it down. What is the fundamental truth here? Organization requires a list and a retrieval system. Well, pen and paper can do that. A simple text file can do that. You rebuild your solution from the ground up rather than just copying what others do.
So we have the structure, we have the thinking tools. Now let's talk about the daily grind, the operational workflow. Because all these systems are great, but if you don't actually use them, they're just digital dust. How do we run this machine day to day?
This is the daily loop. And honestly, if you take nothing else away from this deep dive, take this workflow. It has 3 simple phases. Phase 1 is capture.
The brain dump.
Exactly. The only goal here is to empty the RAM we talked about at the beginning. You need a capture tool, a digital inbox like Todoist or Things, or just a physical pocket notebook. The protocol is simple. Capture immediately.
So I'm out walking the dog, and I suddenly remember I need to call the plumber.
You stop walking, you pull out your phone or your notebook, you write, call plumber, you put it away. That's it.
I don't try to remember it until I get home.
You do not try to remember it. You do not categorize it as a household task yet. You don't do anything but capture. You just stop that Zygarnik loop instantly.
Then comes phase 2. Clarify. This is where I think I always fail. I have a list of random scribbles at the end of the day, and I just stare at them.
That's because you aren't putting on your processor hat. You run this clarify phase once a day, maybe at the end of the day or first thing in the morning. You look at your inbox of captured items, and you apply a very simple logic tree. First question for every item. Is it actionable?
Okay. And if it's not, like it's just a random idea I had.
Then you have 2 choices. Trash it, or if it's genuinely useful information, file it away in your resources folder. If it is actionable, you apply the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule, if it takes less than 2 minutes, do it now.
Do it immediately, right then and there. Don't organize it, don't prioritize it, don't schedule it for later. The time it would take you to track that task is longer than the time it takes to just do it.
Like send that PDF to Bob, just send it.
Just send it and get it out of your system. If it takes longer than 2 minutes, then you ask, am I the right person to do it? If the answer is no, delegate it. Send the email. If the answer is yes, you defer it. That means you put it into a project list with a specific deadline.
Capture, clarify, simple, ruthless, effective. But there's a trap here. I've built systems like this before, and after about 3 weeks, they just break down. I stop checking the lists. They become a source of guilt.
That is inevitable without phase 3, the review. Specifically, the weekly review. This is the part that is absolutely non-negotiable.
The dreaded Sunday review. Why is this so hard for people to stick with?
Because it requires you to confront reality. It's the moment of truth. But if you don't review your system, you're just hoarding tasks, not managing them. Your brain learns not to trust the list.
So what happens in a good weekly review?
You clear your desktop, both physical and digital. You review your calendar for the next 2 weeks. You check your waiting for list to see who you need to nudge. And importantly, you look at your active projects and move any stalled ones to a someday maybe list.
Someday maybe. That's a specific category.
It's a sanctuary for good ideas that aren't timely. If a project is stuck and you know in your gut you aren't going to touch it this week, get it off your active radar. Move it to someday maybe. You have to keep the active list clean and sacred, or your brain will just start ignoring it completely.
Now, even with a perfect system like this, our brains have bugs. Our own programming is flawed. The source lists some specific cognitive biases that just love to mess up our organization.
Oh yeah. The biggest one, by far, is the planning fallacy. We are phenomenally, almost comically terrible at estimating how long things will take. We almost always underestimate.
Oh, I'm so guilty of this.
Yeah.
I'll look at a task like write podcast script and think, yeah, 2 hours tops. And then 6 hours later, I'm crying over a keyboard.
We all do it. It's human nature to imagine the happy path where nothing goes wrong, there are no interruptions, and you're perfectly focused. The fix is just to apply a safety factor. A rule of thumb: if you think a task takes 1 hour, block out 1.5 hours in your calendar. If it's a big, complex project, double your initial estimate.
Just build the buffer in from the start. And then there's decision fatigue.
This is why Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg wore the same thing every day. Your ability to make good, rational decisions acts like a battery. It degrades as the day goes on.
So by 4 p.m., I'm cognitively weaker than I was at 9 a.m.
Much weaker. You are far more likely to make impulsive choices or just give up and say, I'll deal with it tomorrow.
So the fix is to reduce the number of trivial decisions I have to make.
Automate the boring stuff. What to wear, what to eat for breakfast. Don't waste your high-quality morning brain power deciding between oatmeal and toast. Save that precious energy for your MEC analysis or your most important project.
And the last bias, which I think is going to hit home for a listener of a show called The Deep Dive, the collector's fallacy.
Oh, this is a dangerous one in the information age. Collecting information feels like learning. Saving a bookmark feels like acquiring knowledge. Buying a book feels like reading it.
I feel personally attacked right now. My browser has a bookmark folder called To Read that is a graveyard of good intentions.
It's not learning, it is just hoarding. And it creates digital clutter and guilt. The mental shift we need to make is to just-in-time learning, not just-in-case learning.
What's the difference?
Just-in-case is saving that article about gardening just in case you take up gardening someday. Just-in-time is only researching information you have an immediate use for in a current active project. If you find a cool article about something you're not working on right now, file it in resources and walk away. Don't read it, don't study it.
That is a hard pill to swallow, but I can see how it would free up so much mental bandwidth. Okay, let's shift gears to the software of the mind. These are the advanced mental models to help us navigate the system we've built. The first one is inversion.
Inversion is the anti-goal. It comes from the great mathematician Carl Jacobi, who famously said, invert, always invert. The core idea is that it's often impossible to know the right answer or the path to brilliance, but it's usually very easy to identify the wrong answer and the path to stupidity.
So instead of asking, how do I become perfectly organized? I should ask, what?
You should ask, what would absolutely guarantee that I stay a disorganized disaster?
Okay, I can answer that easily. I would keep everything in my head. I would use 5 different notebooks and lose 3 of them. I would never look at my calendar. I would say yes to every single request that comes my way.
Precisely. And now you have a crystal clear roadmap. You just systematically eliminate those failure points. If you just avoid the stupidity, you tend to back your way into brilliance. It's often easier to see the obstacles than the path.
Next up is second-order thinking. The idea of asking, and then what?
Right. Most people and most companies stop at first-order consequences, the immediate result of an action. For example, I will reply to every email immediately as it comes in.
Okay, first-order consequence. My inbox is always clear. I feel super responsive. People will think I'm on top of things. Good, right?
Sounds efficient, but now ask, and then what? What's the second-order consequence?
Well, I guess I'm constantly being interrupted. I'm checking my email every 6 minutes. I can't do any deep, focused work.
Right. Your effective IQ actually drops because of the constant context switching. And the third-order consequence.
I burn out. I produce a lot of fast, mediocre work instead of slow, excellent work. My career stalls.
There you go. Second-order thinking reveals that the efficient choice is actually incredibly destructive in the long run.
We also have the map is not the territory.
This is such a crucial reminder for anyone who loves organizing. Your lists, your PARA system, your Zettelkasten, that is the map. It is not the work itself, which is the territory.
Don't spend all day organizing the list and never actually doing the work.
Exactly. If your system takes more time to maintain than it saves you, destroy it. It's a bad map. You're polishing the map instead of exploring the territory.
I've definitely had days where I spent 4 hours color-coding my to-do list and 0 hours doing the to-dos. It feels productive, but it's a trap. And finally, a couple of razors. Occam's and Hanlon's.
Occam's razor is the famous one. The simplest explanation is usually the right one. Complexity breeds failure. Keep your system as simple as possible. If you need a 20-page manual to use your to-do list, it's too complex.
And Hamlin's razor.
Hanlon's razor is a more compassionate one. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity, or, in our case, by mechanical failure. When you forget something, don't tell yourself, I'm lazy or I'm self-sabotaging.
It's not a moral failing.
It's not. It's a mechanical failure. The right response is, I didn't write it down, or my capture system failed. It removes the guilt and replaces it with a simple bug fix.
That's a much kinder way to treat yourself.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's get into the science of super recall. We've captured and organized the info. How do we make sure it actually sticks in our biological brain?
First and foremost, we have to debunk a huge myth that we all learned in school. Reading something again, rereading your notes or the textbook chapter is not learning. It is not studying.
What is it then?
It's just recognizing. You look at the page and your brain says, oh yeah, I've seen that before. I know that. But that feeling of familiarity is a lie. You can't actually recall it from scratch.
So how do we actually learn something deeply?
You have to use active recall. The brain strengthens a memory when it struggles to pull information out, not when it's passively smoothing it in. The struggle is the signal to grow.
So instead of rereading the chapter, I should close the book and try to explain the main concepts to an empty room. Or write them down from memory?
Yes, or even better, test yourself. Write a question on one side of a flashcard and the answer on the back. Look at the question and force your brain to retrieve the answer. That moment of struggle, that moment where you're frowning and trying to remember, that is the biochemical signal that tells your brain this information matters.
But how often should we be doing this? Because I can't do flashcards for everything forever. This leads to spaced repetition, right?
Right. Memories decay exponentially. You forget most of what you learned within 24 hours. But the magic is, if you recall a memory just before you're about to forget it, the memory trace resets and decays much, much slower the next time.
So there's a perfect moment to review something.
There's an algorithm to it. Typically, you review 1 day later, then 3 days after that, then a week, then a month. The interval gets longer and longer.
And we don't have to calculate this manually, right? I don't want to maintain a spreadsheet of when to review my flashcard.
Oh, God, no. Please don't do that. Use software like Anki or RemNote. They handle all the math for you. You just provide the active recall prompts, the questions and answers, and it serves you the right card at the right time. It's like magic. You can learn a language or the entirety of a medical textbook in a fraction of the time.
Another great tool mentioned in the sources for deep understanding is the Feynman technique.
Named after the brilliant physicist Richard Feynman. He was a genius, but he hated jargon and complexity. His rule was simple. If you can't explain a concept simply like, to an intelligent 12-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself.
I find this one painful because it often reveals that I don't understand things I thought I did.
Yeah.
The gaps become obvious.
That's the entire point. Complexity and jargon are often just a mask for ignorance. When you get stuck trying to explain it simply, you have identified the precise gap in your knowledge. Now you can go back to the source material, fill that specific gap, and try again.
We've covered memory. Now let's talk about decision-making. A structured mind has to make clear choices. What frameworks do our sources offer here?
The classic one, of course, is the Eisenhower matrix. It divides all of your tasks into a 4-quadrant box based on 2 axes, urgent versus important.
Okay.
We tend to live our lives in quadrant 1, urgent and important. These are the crises, the fires we have to put out. And we also spend a lot of time in quadrant 3, urgent, but not important. These are the interruptions, like that phone call you didn't need to take, or most emails.
But the real magic, the key to a successful life, is in quadrant 2.
Exactly. Quadrant 2 is not urgent, but important. This is strategic planning, exercise, relationship building, learning new skills. These things never scream for your attention. They never have an urgent deadline.
So you have to schedule them, or they just never happen.
Correct. And if you ignore quadrant 2 for long enough, everything eventually becomes a crisis and moves into quadrant 1. Your health fails, your relationships crumble, your skills become obsolete.
I also like the regret minimization framework. It sounds a bit intense, but it really cuts through the noise of daily life.
It's the Jeff Bezos approach. When he was deciding whether to quit his high-paying Wall Street job to start Amazon, he projected himself to age 80. He looked back from that vantage point and asked, will I regret not having tried this?
It strips away all the short-term fear and social pressure.
Totally. At age 80, you won't care if you tried something and failed and lost some money. You will care deeply if you never even tried. It highlights the long-term value over short-term comfort.
And for those moments when we're stuck waiting for more information to make a call, the 40-70 rule.
This is from Colin Powell. His rule was never make a decision with less than 40% of the information. If you do, you're just guessing. But he also said never wait for more than 70% of the information. If you do, you're stalling.
So there's a sweet spot.
A sweet spot. Once you have about 70% of the data, the rest is diminishing returns. Make the call and be prepared to correct your course later. Don't wait for certainty because it will never come.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. We're moving into Section 6. Biological engineering. We've talked about the software, the apps, and mental models. But what about the hardware, the actual wetware of the brain? Because I can have the best to-do list in the world, but if I'm exhausted, I'm not doing any of it.
You absolutely cannot think your way out of biological failure. It's impossible. If your neurochemistry is off, your entire organization system will crumble. And the biggest shock for most people usually comes when they learn about memory. Memory consolidation, the actual saving of information, does not happen when you are studying. It happens when you are sleeping.
So the all-nighter, that badge of honor for students and startup founders, is basically the worst thing you can possibly do for learning.
The absolute worst. It is biological self-sabotage. Here's the formula for neuroplasticity for rewiring the brain. Focus plus a sense of urgency. When you're really focused, your brain releases acetylcholine. When there's some urgency, it releases norepinephrine. Together, those two chemicals mark the neurons. They put a little chemical flag on them saying, save this connection.
But that's just the flag.
That's just the flag. The actual consolidation, the building of new proteins, the strengthening of that synapse, the actual saving of the file, that happens during deep sleep and REM sleep later that night. If you don't sleep, your brain just deletes all the flags.
So you did all the work, but you forgot to hit the save button.
You forgot to hit save. Exactly. There's also this incredible concept called the gap effect. This is a hack for learning while you're awake. Your brain naturally works in about 90-minute bouts. These are called ultradian rhythms. After a 90-minute learning sprint, the best thing you can do is nothing for 10 to 20 minutes.
Define nothing. Can I scroll Instagram? Can I check my email?
No, absolutely not. That's the opposite of nothing. No new inputs. Stare at a wall, walk around the block without your phone, close your eyes, and just sit there.
Why is that so critical?
Because your hippocampus, the memory center of your brain, is replaying the neural firing sequence of what you just learned at about 20 times the original speed during that rest period. It's cementing the pattern.
And if I pick up my phone?
You flood the brain with new high-velocity visual data, and you completely interrupt that replay process. You literally overwrite the memory you were trying to form.
That is wild. We are so afraid of being bored that we are actively killing our ability to learn. And if we're feeling tired in the afternoon, the sources mention NSDR.
Non-sleep deep rest. It's a 20-minute protocol, very similar to yoga nidra. You basically lie down and listen to a script that guides you into a state of deep relaxation. Research from Stanford shows it's incredibly effective at flushing adenosine, the sleepiness molecule, from your brain.
So it's better than a nap.
In many ways, yes. It reboots your working memory without the grogginess you can get from waking up from deep sleep during a nap.
Now let's talk about the enemy of all focus.
Yeah.
Dopamine.
A cheap high. A lot of disorganization stems from a completely fried dopamine reward system. If you are constantly checking email or Twitter or TikTok, you are training your brain to seek and expect novelty every 15 seconds. Organization, by its very definition, is low dopamine. It's boring. It's maintenance work.
So if my brain is addicted to the high peaks of social media, it will physically reject the boring but important work of filing my taxes or planning my week.
Yes, it will feel physically painful, like withdrawal. The contrast is too great.
So the solution is a dopamine detox.
A realistic one. You don't have to go live in a cave, but you need to front-load the pain. No high dopamine inputs, no social media, no news, no gaming, until your important cognitive work for the day is done. Keep your baseline dopamine level low so that the work itself feels satisfying. If you start your day with a hit of TikTok, a spreadsheet will feel like torture.
And what about syncing with our body clock?
Yeah.
Circadian sync.
This is a simple one. Just pay attention to your core body temperature. In the morning, for the first few hours after you wake up, your body temp is rising. This is when you are at your peak for executive function, for analysis, MEC trees, hard logic, and focused work.
And in the afternoon?
In the afternoon, as your body begins to cool down in preparation for sleep, your inhibitory neural networks relax.
Which means what, in plain English?
It means you are less focused, but you are more associative and creative. That's a bad time for math, but a great time for creative synthesis. That's when you should be connecting your Zettelkasten notes or brainstorming new ideas. Do your expense reports in the morning, do your creative work in the afternoon.
Let's move on to environmental and output engineering. This is about managing the information supply chain. How do we filter what even comes into our system in the first place?
The Lindy effect. This is the ultimate filter. It's an idea that says the future life expectancy of a non-perishable thing, like an idea or a book, is proportional to its current age.
So if a book has been in print for 50 years, it will likely stay relevant for another 50 years.
Exactly. So read history, not news. News is noise. It's designed to trigger an emotional response and then be forgotten tomorrow. It clutters your mind with data that will be irrelevant in a week. History is signal. Reading Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations or Marcus Aurelius's Meditations gives you mental models that will last a lifetime.
When we do read, the source suggests syntopic reading. This sounds like a lot of work, but I'm intrigued.
It is work, but it's how you actually find the truth. Reading just one book on a topic creates bias. You just adopt that one author's view. Reading 2 books creates confusion because they inevitably disagree. But reading 3 or 4 books allows for synthesis.
So if I want to learn about nutrition, I shouldn't just read the carnivore diet book.
Right. You should read the carnivore book, a vegan book, a keto book, and a standard biochemistry textbook. Then you triangulate. Where do they all agree? Probably on avoid processed sugar. That is likely the truth with a capital T. Where do they all disagree? That is opinion and dogma. You're mapping the entire territory, not just memorizing one person's map.
I love that. Let's talk about our physical space, environmental architecture.
You want to design your space for affordance and friction. These are just simple physics concepts. Make the good behavior the path of least resistance. That's affordance. If you want to read more, put your Kindle on your pillow. You have to physically move it to go to sleep.
And friction.
Use friction to stop bad habits. Put your phone in another room while you're working.
Does it have to be another room? Can't I just turn it over on my desk?
No, that's not enough friction. Studies have shown that the mere physical presence of a smartphone, even if it's turned off, reduces your working memory capacity by about 10%. Your brain is actively spending energy ignoring it. Is it buzzing? Did the screen light up? Put it away. Increase the friction required to check it.
Digital hygiene is also mentioned. I love this idea of desktop bankruptcy.
If your computer desktop is a chaotic mess of files, don't spend hours trying to sort it. You'll hate it and you'll give up. Just create a new folder called Old Desktop with today's date and drag everything into it. And then start fresh with a clean slate.
It's like a pardon from the governor.
It is. And the funny thing is, you will quickly realize you almost never need to open that old desktop folder ever again. It was all just junk anyway.
Now, output protocols. How do we bridge the massive gap between thinking about work and actually doing the work? Procrastination is the big enemy here.
Procrastination usually happens because a task feels too big or too vague. Write a thesis. The brain looks at that, calculates the enormous energy costs, and just says, no way, let's watch YouTube instead. The solution is intermediate packets.
Breaking it down into tiny chunks.
Tiny, usable, non-threatening chunks. 20-minute chunks. Instead of write annual report, packet 1 is draft a few possible titles. Packet 2 is dump all relevant bullet points into a document. Packet 3 is find 3 charts to support the data. It turns a scary, creative process into a simple assembly line. Anyone can do anything for 20 minutes.
And to keep that momentum going from one day to the next, the Hemingway Bridge. This is one of my favorites.
Ernest Hemingway had a rule that he would always stop writing for the day mid-sentence.
That sounds incredibly frustrating. My brain needs the closure.
It solves the cold start problem. Think of it like parking your car on a steep downhill slope. The next morning, all you have to do is release the brake and you're moving. If you finish a chapter perfectly, you have to conjure up a whole new train of thought the next morning. That's like trying to start your car parked uphill in the snow. If you stop mid-sentence, you know exactly where to pick up. You bypass that painful ramp-up period.
And for high-speed decision-making in a complex environment, the OODA loop.
Observe, orient, decide, act. It comes from fighter pilots. The key insight is that in a fast-moving environment, speed matters more than perfect accuracy. It is much better to cycle through the OODA loop 10 times quickly, observing the results and reorienting each time, than to spend weeks trying to decide perfectly just once.
We are in the home stretch now, Section 8. Metacognition, social, and identity. This is about debugging the self.
One of the best tools for this is the premortem. Before you start a big project, you get your team in a room and you imagine it is 6 months in the future and the project has failed catastrophically. Then you write the story of how and why it failed.
So you're predicting your own failure. I got lazy, or we ran out of money, or a competitor beat us to market.
Exactly. You're uncovering the hidden risks and assumptions. Once you see them written down, you can create a prevention plan. It completely kills the natural optimism bias that leads to so many failures.
And steel manning.
This is the opposite of straw manning an argument. If you disagree with someone, you aren't allowed to argue against their position until you can state their view better and more persuasively than they can themselves.
That's hard.
It's very hard, but it forces you to understand the structure of their logic, not just have an emotional reaction to their conclusion.
And the 5 whys.
This is for root cause analysis. You just keep asking why, like a curious child. Why am I disorganized? Because I have too many notes. Why? Because I write down everything I read. Why? Because I have fear of missing out. Why? Because I lack confidence in my own intelligence. Boom.
Wow.
Now you know the real problem isn't your note-taking system. It's a deep-seated insecurity. You can't fix insecurity with a better folder structure. You need a different tool.
That went deep, fast. Let's look at the people around us, social dynamics.
The anthropologist Robin Dunbar's research suggests we can only maintain about 150 stable relationships, but really only 5 to 15 people in an inner circle. The old saying is true. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If they're chaotic and reactive, you will become chaotic and reactive. You have to curate your people just like you curate your information.
And to manage that network, the sources suggest a personal CRM. That sounds a little cold.
It sounds cold, but it's actually about caring efficiently. Keep a simple list of the important people in your life. Note the last time you spoke, their kid's name, what their current challenge is. Checking that list before you meet someone isn't manipulation. It allows you to bypass the shallow small talk and connect deeply and immediately. It shows you care enough to remember.
Finally, we get to the core of it all, the identity shift.
All these tools, Dash PRA, Anki, the Ogle Loop, they will all eventually fail if your underlying identity is, I am a messy, disorganized person. Behavior change is hard and temporary. Identity change is permanent.
So you have to stop saying, I'm trying to get organized.
You have to stop that. You have to start saying, I am an organized person, or I am not the kind of person who misses deadlines. You have to change the story you tell yourself about yourself.
It's about raising your standards, not just chasing goals.
Exactly. A goal is clean my desk. A standard is I never leave the office with a dirty desk. When you raise your personal standard, the organization just follows naturally.
So what does this all mean? Let's recap the master workflow for the listener who wants the cheat sheet, the ultimate operating system.
Okay, let's do a rapid fire. 1, biological. Protect your sleep and your focus cycles. No more all-nighters.
2, input. Filter everything with the Lindy effect. Ignore the noise. Focus on the signal.
3, capture. Catch every single thought instantly in a trusted capture tool. Empty your RAM.
4, process. Apply PARA to everything. Is it actionable? Does it have a deadline?
5, think. Use inversion and MECE to structure your problems before you try to solve them.
6, decide. Use regret minimization for big choices and the 40-70 rule for fast ones.
7, output. Use intermediate packets and the Hemingway Bridge to beat procrastination.
And 8, review. The weekly review is non-negotiable. It's the glue that holds the entire system together.
That's the system.
That is the ultimate operating system. But there's a final truth here, a deeper reason we resist this, isn't there?
There is. The mess is usually fear. We keep our minds messy and chaotic because clarity is terrifying. If you write down a perfectly clear list of exactly what you need to do to achieve your goal, you no longer have the excuse of being confused or overwhelmed.
You are forced to act, and you are forced to confront the possibility of failure.
Organization is confronting reality.
So to our listener, here is the challenge. Don't let this just be another example of the collector's fallacy. Don't just listen to this deep dive, nod your head, feel smart for an hour, and then do nothing.
Do the mind sweep right now, as soon as this is over. Take a blank sheet of paper or open a new document. Set a timer for 15 minutes and write down every single open loop that is taking up space in your life. Every worry, every task, every nagging idea, get it out of your RAM.
And then apply PRA. Just draw 4 boxes on the page, sort that master list, and then
the most liberating step of all, delete, go through your list and cross out at least 20% of the items you know in your heart you are never actually going to do. Be free of them forever.
That's it for this deep dive. Go build your external brain. We'll see you next time.